Hey guys, welcome back to my world of modeling and my workbench. Dan here as always, and in this video we're going to be doing another project modification video here. Kind of a short type of how-to video on another commonly requested subject. First and foremost, I want to apologize for the lack of videos lately. I've just been real busy doing some other stuff outside of the actual hobby, just working on stuff and just life in general. But I have been working on some projects here and there, so I will have some updates coming to show you guys what I've been working on. But just really a lack of actual weathering videos lately. I haven't been able to really film too much because the projects I have been doing have been pretty time consuming, and I just usually want to get in there and get them done. Trying to film everything obviously is another big step added that adds weeks to doing just one project. So that's why I've been kind of avoiding the weathering videos lately, but I do got some coming, so stay tuned. In the meantime, this will kind of tide you guys over on a project video, and again, it's another commonly requested video that I've gotten for Athearn telemotor rear gear modification on these units. So what we're going to be talking about is an Athearn telemotor here, and in this case I have one of the rarer early RTR versions of the SD40T-2 that started featuring the complete opened rear air intake for these telemotors. And this is a feature you saw on the SD45T and SD40T-2 variants. And the issue that I've always had with the early variants is obviously you can see through this grill, which is a great detail, but you can see that rear tower gear tower sticking up through the grill, and it's not prototypical because you don't see this part through these units in real life, and no matter what I've done to try to kind of camouflage that, it's never really worked too well. And something I discovered I could do was to remove that and actually hide it with a false floor and still have the truck attached like this one is now. This is another kind of a controversial thing too, because this does somewhat affect the operation of this locomotive. By removing that tower gear, you effectively make this rear truck a dummy pickup truck. Get it? Anyways, but this only will have power being drawn for the motor, but the truck itself will not be powered. Only the front truck will after you do this kind of modification. So it is a controversial thing. I know a lot of people don't want to mess with the function of their locomotive, which is understandable. So this kind of modification, it isn't for everybody. This is something I personally do. I'm not saying you have to do this. It's for those who just wanted to know how I was doing this, because I actually have had a lot of questions about how I do this particular modification. So in this video we're going to be breaking it down on how I modify this to be completely see-through and still have the truck in place and not just falling out. So like I said, we'll break it down here. It's very simple. We'll take a look at it. Basically the materials you're going to need are a few sizes of styrene, which we'll go over as we get into this video. So let's go ahead and get the camera set up for the workbench and we'll get started. This is going to be the unit we're going to be looking at is again HLCX 6145 and SD40T-2 X Rio Grande, so it's got the short fuel tank. Interestingly enough, this one came from the factory with missing air filter grills, so that's pretty weird. But anyways, other than that, it's just going to be a basic modification here. We're going to be removing this, and so that we can basically have that full see-through effect. Now, with these Athearn units, they're very easy to disassemble and modify. What we're going to be doing is removing the coupler pockets here and both ends, and in some cases I think these this one does not have it, but some of these tunnel motors do have the screw at both ends, and you would have to remove those to basically access the shell and remove it from the chassis. But it's as easy as that to actually get to everything. Also, this modification, there is another way around it. With the newer Athearn units, it's important to remember that they re-released these units with a modified truck where the tower gear is actually now reversed, and instead of being on this end of the truck, it's on the front and it's concealed by these hood doors here, so it's not as visible. So the other option to modify these units is to just simply get the new Athearn chassis and then swap all your details around, but then you have to repaint it and modify it and do all that, so that's a whole other kind of can of worms of doing that. But if you didn't want to have to do all this splicing and dicing of this modification itself, you could opt to that, but that's totally your call here. I'm doing it my way for this video, and that's what we're going to be focusing on. So let's go ahead and take the shell off the chassis and we'll get into this. Alright, I went ahead and unscrewed everything, so this will just basically pop right off. And by the way, I removed all the details on this thing because I'm doing a complete strip down and rebuild, so you don't have to go this far if you're using just a factory model. You're not planning on doing any crazy modifications to other than the truck gear modification. Basically, you just lift the shell off and it should just come right off, but you do got to be kind of careful and just kind of pry up on everything. I'll usually grab it by the truck like that and then lift up on the frame, and the shell should just come right off like that. So this will expose us to the interior. We'll carefully set the shell aside here. What we're going to need to do is work on the rear section here. And on the rear section you have this large weight, and this is something I will go ahead and remove. And I'm also going to have to remove the leads from the truck to the board. So we're going to have to pop these out. Unfortunately, with the Athearn parts, these are just held in by little plastic tabs. So we'll just simply pop the board off the motor clip like that, and then we'll just remove those. And then I'm also going to be removing the light from the back hood here, but that's just because I want to be able to completely, fully remove the shell away from the chassis so I can have complete and full access to this. But if you can work with it like this, then I wouldn't worry about it too much. But anyways, that's what I'm going to do for my particular build. Alright, so since that last clip, what I did was I disconnected the wire leads from the truck to the board. Those are off, and I removed the top weight with 2 screws, and then on the truck I just basically removed the top cap for the tower gear. We're not going to be reinstalling that because we're essentially going to be cutting this whole portion of the tower gear off of the actual truck. So in order to do this and access this and get rid of the gears, we're going to take the entire Athearn truck apart by removing this clip here, this top clip here, and these clips here. And I'm also going to be removing the side frames also because I'll be modifying these and doing some detail work to them. But we just basically need to access this entire portion. And I'm going to be removing this top piece with a Dremel off camera. It's very easy to do. All you got to do is make sure you hold your tool straight and just make a nice clean cut across the top here. For any of you who do not have a Dremel, you can use an X-Acto blade like a chisel or a regular number 2 blade. I've done it before. However, you do have to be very careful because this is slippery engineering plastic and it's a little bit hard to work with. So you do got to keep that in mind, but this is doable with just a knife. Here is the truck in its 2 halves now completed by cutting off the top of the tower gear connector and then sanding everything flush so that everything's nice and flat up there. So these 2 halves will now go back together, and we can put the wheels in, put the clips in. You can put several of the gears back in if you want, but they really have no purpose at this point because they're not powered anymore. So obviously now you remove that piece, the issue is that this truck will not stay in place. There's no way this will actually be held in to the frame now that you've removed that clip. So you can put it back underneath the locomotive, but as soon as you lift it up, the truck will just fall right back out. And the only thing that'll be holding it onto the engine will be the actual wires themselves. So we're going to basically fabricate a new little clip, and some styrene sheets will also cover everything up, and they'll cover up the holes in the chassis to make everything kind of nicely disappear and blend in, and it'll look a lot more prototypical. So we'll go ahead and reassemble this truck, and I'll come back and show you guys the reassembly process and then how I'm going to fill all this in. So now that the truck has been officially modified and put back together, the problem is after you've put it back on the model, it's not going to stay on there. You can see it's just going to fall right back out. So we need to basically create a little cap for the truck and then a piece that'll fit across the top of this frame that will allow the truck to stay in place and also swivel freely and not fall through. So what we're going to do is actually make a little block from styrene to fill in the empty space that's between where the tower gear used to be. So you can see that there's that space in between the little area where that clip would be and then the actual part of the truck there. So what we're going to do is fill that in, and I've done it enough times I figured out the exact styrene you need to use, and in this case I'm going to be using styrene blocks to create the little block I need. So what I have here is some Evergreen item 8610 strips here. These are pretty long, but these are the correct size to fit in between that little space on the truck tower, because we basically need to put a little cap of material there to build up to the correct height first. So I take a strip of this, I cut it roughly about a ½ inch or so, and then I'll glue them together with plastic cement, and then I will then take a piece of 20-inch styrene, glue the 2 pieces onto that block, cut it out, and then you should have something like this. As you can see, it's a little cap. Alright. Now, if we come back to the model and we take this, I'm going to insert that little piece there, and you can see with that styrene cap inserted, it's the correct height to match the size of the deck there. So now what we need to do is actually create a little piece of styrene, very thin styrene, in this case 10-inch styrene, to bridge across this and also be glued down to this cap
That way it'll support the truck. That way the truck won't fall through as we lift it up. So that's what we're going to work on next. But first we're going to glue this cap onto the truck. And in the case of actually gluing this down, what I recommend you use is a little bit of cyanoacrylate or super glue first. Glue that on, and then follow behind by using a little bit of plastic cement. This is slippery engineering plastic being glued here to the styrene, and this is a little bit harder to glue to because it's a pretty slippery plastic. So you want to kind of try to fuse these pieces together. This is a permanent joint you're trying to create here, so you want to make sure it's very well glued, and also make sure you don't get any glue down inside the truck. It's just going to be right on the top there. So I recommend you glue right to the top of this block, and then secure it in place thoroughly, let it dry, and then we can move on to the actual building of the top cap, and then we can start filling in all this area with some flat styrene. So now that that's glued in place, we can go ahead and install our little bridge piece here. What this is 010-inch styrene. It's got a little thickness to it, as you can see, and I've cut it to this rough shape. The idea here is that you want it to bridge across and be able to support this truck on both sides without it falling through. And it also has to be able to clear these corners because that'll interfere with the fit of the shell. So you have to be really careful when cutting that. You can kind of just eyeball the piece, and basically it just has to be able to fit across so that it will hold that truck in place. And as you can see, no matter how we pivot it, if I can get it to hold in place, it won't go over that edge of the chassis frame here where the shell will fit. It'll fit nicely. So what we're going to do is go ahead and glue that in place with a little super glue right on top, just like that. And I'm just going to take our piece and we'll just put it right on top as evenly as we can get it spaced out here, just like that. And then we just hold it in place for a second, and I'll give it a little pressure, and there we go. And as you can see, that should hold it in place. Now that this truck is secured, I want to go ahead and put in a false floor to cover all of this exposed area up. Remember that only this area here is what's going to be visible through that grill, so I need to put it in a false floor. And to raise the height up, I'm again going to take some 010-inch styrene and lay down some sheets of plastic to go over these metal portions. I'll put a little bit of styrene bracing around this edge here as well, and then we're going to be putting a laminated piece of 005-inch styrene, so very, very fine styrene strip over this area to cover it. So it'll basically be a false floor. In real life, there is no gap, obviously. There's nothing in this room. There is just a large tread plate decking portion over that truck in real life. So that's what we're trying to replicate with this. So I'm going to take and cut out a few more pieces like this, and I'll show you what it looks like, and then we'll come back and install the false floor. As you can see, I got some styrene strip here, and it all goes right around that frame. So now what we can do is cut our big piece of 005-inch styrene, which is very paper thin, as you can see, very thin stuff. And we're just going to basically cut this out to the rough dimension. As you can see, I have a piece prepared, and if you look, it actually goes right over that, and it'll cover up all of our work, so it'll blend in nicely. So what we need to do here is put some glue here and around the little piece here. We don't want to get glue down in this little nut because that's what's actually allowing the truck to swivel and be, connected to the frame. So we don't want to get glue in this, so I'm just going to simply glue around it like this by taking our tube of glue and we'll just work it around. Now take our piece of styrene and very carefully place it over, just try to center it like this. And just make sure it's nice and flat. Kind of burnish it a little bit there. There we go. Alright, so that's all in place. As you can see, it's all nicely covered up. Truck's not going anywhere. You can see it's nicely secured. So now what we're going to need to do is put our weight back on. We'll guide our wires through the weight, and then we'll just reconnect them to the board. It's that simple. So this is the point in time where you just want to make sure that everything's running correctly after you've reconnected the wiring. You got to make sure it actually runs flawlessly. So in this case, I've just kept the shell off, and if we actually take the locomotive here and set it up, I'll just give it a quick demonstration. And this is on DC power only. And as you can see, it runs just fine. That grinding and binding noise is the lack of lubrication, so I'm going to have to lube up that front truck here, but that's something I'll do later on as I progress through this build. But as you can see, the locomotive runs fine, and we're ready to finish up the modification here by painting the deck, and then we'll kind of tuck this wiring in and we can reconnect the shell. So just to hide everything together and make our work look nice and neat, we're just going to take a little bit of black acrylic paint and we're just going to go in and we're going to fill in all of these little areas. I'm going to paint the side of the frame there and all these little parts black so that everything blends in place. For taste, you can add a little weathering to this. You can add a little rusty chalk powder, something like that, to kind of age it up a little bit, make it look a little bit more grimy and dirty in there. However, this is going to really not be very noticeable, so it's kind of up to you if you want to do that or not. I've weathered some of these interiors before, but most of the time it's just kind of up to choice. If you want to do that, you can add the extra little spice to it, but in this particular case, I'm just going to be painting the whole thing. So jumping ahead about a month here, this is the completed 6145, all put back together now. It looks very, very beautiful. Tons of nice details were done to it. All kinds of enhancements, cleanup overall, and then of course prototypical nice grimy weathering. I love these grimy old lease or tunnel motors. This is one of my favorites right now. Staying on topic though, here's the grill now that it's completed. As you look through it, you can see it is in fact completely see-through now compared to what it originally looked like. It's much more prototypical, and I just personally love the look a lot, and it's something I do on all of my Athearn tunnel motors. Now again, something like this, it does take a little bit of work. It doesn't take that much skill to do. It is doable. You know, again, it is one of those things though. Some modelers might not want to do something like this to their operating models, and I understand that risk is that you're losing that rear power truck and only having the front truck, but again, I assure you these locomotives still can pull a few cars, and since most of these are going to be trailing B for my layout anyway, it doesn't bother me that much, but it is something that you should consider if you're going to do this modification in all seriousness. So I'm going to leave that up to you, and please don't leave comments in the comment section below about, oh, what a waste of time or anything like that. I get it. You know, it's a thing that some people will either agree with or they don't. I'm giving you the option here to look at this because I've had a lot of people ask me about this. So hopefully this is helpful to you guys. If you have any questions, again, leave some comments. Try to hook me up on Facebook, anything like that. You guys can try to find me there. I'll try to get back to your comments whenever I can. It can be hard sometimes though because I get so many, and I'm not often near my phone or my computer to be able to respond, but I'll do the best I can here. So again, hopefully this tides you guys over. I'll have some more update videos coming, some more layout update videos, and some more how-tos as well. So thank you for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.